Hey, folks.
Oh,
Hey,
Mr.
how you doing?
Lococo, what's up, man?
How's it going?
All right, it's going all right. We're having fun over here, screwing up LCM.
Let me
So,
get you a stream. One sec.
what? What do you mean, get him a stream? What?
Oh, the Twitch stream, so you can see.
Oh, yeah, I guess if you want to, that's true. I mean, oh, that's right. I'm not sharing in Blue Jeans, am I?
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I
Kinda
forgot about
need that
that.
if you
It's kind
wanna-
of useful if you can actually see what we're doing.
Got here.
Yeah, are you sending it over to him?
Yep.
Cool, thanks.
There's the stream.
Hey, this will give me another viewer.
You're live on Twitch.
Okay. I guess what I want to do is mute this Twitch stream, though. Otherwise, I'm going to get
Yes,
really
mute it.
disoriented.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Mute
We'll
the
talk
Twitch
on this
stream
and mute this
we talk
stream.
over Blue Jeans.
Yeah. So while that's coming up, I'll give you a quick synopsis of what I've done. And by the way, Mike, don't pull punches. Feel free to rake me over the coals. So I had so what I'm doing is I'm setting up a local cluster, right? And I originally had one node. By the way, I'm using the absolute latest Ubuntu, which according to LCM and Op Center is not technically supported. So I have, if we take a look. I don't know if you can see anything yet, but
I just managed to get through my ads, so I've got a Twitch stream here.
okay. All right. So what I've done, just so you know, is I have turned on disable platform check, or I've disabled it. Right. I've made it true. So disable platform
That's
check
fine.
for true.
The platform check is the platform check is really about it's just a gate to let people know when they're doing something that might cause them problems.
Right.
But in this case, I'm not aware of any technical issues around the latest Ubuntu version. It hasn't been certified, but that's not to say it doesn't work.
And by the way, it's been working fine. I don't think that has anything to do. I don't think that has anything to do with what's going on. So here's what was happening, and I think I know where I messed up.
No clue.
What's that?
Oh, never mind. Go ahead.
Oh, so originally I had used LCM to install this particular node at 6.7.0. And that was all fine, right? All great. Now, through some other things that I was doing here, as Eric and I have been going through the configuration, I went and decided I was going to go ahead and upgrade it to 6.7.2. Now, my mistake was, and my poor machine is lagging something terrible right now. There we go, yeah. So what I had done, though, by accident was when the first mistake I made was when, even though I already had the thing installed, when I went to use 6.7.2, I had I'm trying to remember now, because I had lost the configuration based off of something I was doing, and I'm trying to remember why that actually happened. Right. Okay, let me step back. I'm sorry, I totally forgot an important point. When I originally went to install Op Center, I followed the online documentation, the DaysX documentation, to do it by package. I was having an absolute hell of a time, though, because I was using a strong password with lots of extra characters, struggling to get apt-get to recognize that properly. So I said, screw it, and I just did a tarball install. I then had all that working just fine, and I installed my node in the cluster with the tarball version of Op Center. I later on revisited the password thing, got that all working, and this time I moved away from the tarball install. I went for the service install, the package, right? When I did that, though, I didn't bring over any of the configuration or anything like that from the tarball install. So I just imported the cluster into LCM. Now, actually, here's the first question. Now that I think about it, here's a set of questions, and you might just be able to flat out answer these, because we definitely. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Before you get to the first question,
yeah.
I have the 0th answer.
Yeah.
Which is if you're struggling with password, if you're struggling URL encoding your password
yes.
so that it works in the repo files for apt or
That's
Yum,
it. Right there, yeah.
You should be aware of the DataStax Academy download tokens.
Okay.
So what this is DataStax Academy is your DataStax Academy account is what mediates access to all of your DataStax downloads, the tarballs, the debs, the RPMs, all that stuff.
Okay.
You log in with your Academy credentials to get those. And you can at any point log in with your username and password, and that's just fine.
Okay.
But say you're a system administrator at a big corp, and you have 10 other system administrators that all work on your DSC boxes. It's a little bit awkward to put in your personal password, your DataStax Academy account on that machine. So we came up with this thing called a download token.
That's what that's about.
The download token will let you download the tarball, and it will let you download the packages, but it will not let you log into your other Academy stuff. So you can't like post on the forums with the token. You can't, all that other stuff you can't do with the download token. It's only good for getting DataStax software.
No way. Hey, Eric, do you know how to clip in Twitch? Do you know how to do that?
No, I do not.
Could you do me a big favor? Could you record down the timestamp of what we're talking about right now?
Maybe.
If you can see it, if you see it there. Because what you just said, Mike, is gold. That totally explains that. And what I'm going to do then, I'm not going to do it right now, but I will go back through the process and do it that way. And that sounds like that's addressing the exact issue that I originally had, right? So okay.
And the other cool thing about the download token is it has no special characters.
Which then makes that a lot easier for apt-get trying to set that configuration up. I see. Good. No, that's awesome. So that's actually really nice too, because like then in our content and everything, when we're talking about this stuff, and by the way, you also pointed out about putting in your own personal password. I admit, like I don't like that at all. I think that's like I'm literally storing my actual password in a file that someone can get access to. So I love the idea that that's what the token's for. So good. Okay, so that answers that, right? That answers that. So then when I had done, like I said, I reinstalled Op Center once I got that working, I reinstalled it via packages with the instructions, and I left my tarball one there, but I didn't bring any of the configuration over. So what that meant is that yes, I could have Op Center start managing the cluster, but an OpCM or an LCM, I had to then tell it to start managing this cluster and import it in. Now, when I do that, and I've done this with other clusters before, and again, this might be one where you just flat out have an answer. I've noticed that when you import the cluster, an existing cluster into LCM, at first, it'll actually show you like the little red flag. It'll say, hey, this isn't installed yet. And in order to do anything, like even if I could go to an individual node and I could say run a configure job, but if I try to do that at the cluster level or the DC level, it says you must install first. So the question I have for you there is when somebody is importing an existing cluster, what is the correct procedure to get the cluster level and DC level configuration to work properly? Do you actually have to run an install job on the cluster, or is there something else you need to do there? Did I lose you guys?
Nope.
Okay. Did I lose Mike?
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get my Twitch stuff set up. I can't get you the timestamp.
Oh, okay. No worries.
The web UI for some reason.
Okay.
You did not lose me, but I was helpfully trying to look up something in a different browser tab, and I lost the browser tab that I was using.
All of a sudden, both of you went quiet, and I was like, uh-oh, I think I lost these guys.
No, I'm good. Sorry. So, yeah, import is interesting. So the link that I was actually looking for there, before I even addressed the topic of import, was I was looking for our failover and backup links for Op Center. Because it is relatively straightforward to copy your configuration from one Op Center instance to another if you're moving machines or whatever. And that is documented. So when I get a chance, I'll dig you up that link and I'll shoot it over to you. That would have been, the way to probably do it. The easiest way to avoid extra work. Is if you actually migrated your Op Center and LCM configs over, then when you started up your new Op Center instance, you would already have that cluster in LCM.
Is it just as simple as
history and all that stuff?
Bringing over your comp files, or is there more to it than that?
There is a little bit more to it. There's a couple of runtime state files. That for example, the cluster topology, right? That the desired topology is stored in that runtime state for LCM. Also, your job history. Also, your Academy credentials that you've entered. All that stuff is stored in a runtime state file for LCM. And if you just shut down Op Center and copy it over, you'll get it. There's also a few other things we store in the file system, like did you know that LCM will create for you, if you turn on like internode encryption, LCM will create some certificates for you?
That's right.
So those also are stored in the file system. So that, there's a half a dozen files that you can copy over, and you just shut down Op Center in one spot, rsync them over, or SCP them, or however, and start up Op Center in the next spot, and it's like you never left. Your home is
so that's gold nugget number 2, which is when you are importing a cluster an existing cluster into LCM, that there is a proper migration path that you use if you're doing that, right? If you're importing existing one and you were using Op Center previously. Now, how about the question?
I would just sort of modify that to say, if your use case is you've got one Op Center and you're trying to get to a different Op Center.
Yes,
there's a way to bring all of your state with you. There are other use cases for import that don't involve swapping Op Centers.
Okay,
you can talk about those in a minute. But if you're trying to get from one Op Center to another, import is maybe not the best tool. The best tool is to bring your runtime state.
Got it. Okay, so if I had one Op Center that I did like a tarball install like I did, and now I'm going to another one, or I move systems or something like that, then there is a migration path that you need to perform. So that makes sense though, because when you're honestly, this is where RTFM, this is what I was telling Eric earlier, like some of the stuff I'm doing here I would never do in a production system, because I'm kind of going hard and fast with some of the rules on this particular setup, because I can just wipe it and start over anytime, which is probably dangerous in itself. But in any real system, right, like it's not just the opcenerd.conf, it's not just the cluster conf or whatever. You've got all these other files, like their credential files, like you're talking about, the job logs, all that stuff that you want to bring over. So that makes sense that there's a migration path. So what happens if you're starting in a case where you have an existing cluster, you don't have a previous Op Center, right? And you've now imported your cluster into LCM, and it tells you, well, I can't do that. I've got to run an install job first. What's the proper procedure there?
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about that. And also, to be clear, you can do this fast and loose migration when you're swapping Op Centers. You're just making a little bit more work for yourself, and potentially opening yourself up to some more bugs. Like if you, or I don't know, bugs, like, but potential issues that you might have to resolve. Like, for example, if you are using LCM certificate creation, then it's going to find certificates on those nodes, and it won't be able to generate new ones. I don't think it's actually going to try and replace their certificates. If it finds them there, it's just going to leave them. But it won't be able to generate new compatible certificates anymore. So if you added a node later on, it won't have that certificate authority store from which to issue a new certificate for that node. And at that point, you'll have trouble communicating via internode. So there's some extra steps. But we totally can do this fast and loose workflow that you wanted to do. And we'll talk about some of the things that you'd want to know in order to do that successfully. Okay. So either you want to do a fast and loose Op Center migration, or you're not doing an Op Center migration. You just have a pre-existing non-LCM cluster that you want to bring in and begin managing with LCM.
Yes.
So the first thing you would do is you would add that cluster to Op Center. What I typically call Op Center proper. This is the browser tab that has metrics and agent status and backups and repair service and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And in order to do that, I think you basically just want you want a couple of seed nodes to just start talking to, and then you also want your cluster credentials, your CQL credentials, and I think that's almost everything you need.
Yeah, and in that part, that's actually where I had started. So I don't know if you see the screen now. Now, obviously, my one node is down, but I had started there. So once I had reinstalled Op Center using the package, the first thing I went and did is I told it, hey, guess what? Here's my node, right? Here are the credentials, and bam, I had all of that working. So that part was in fact there. I then went through the dialogues here, right, where I said, hey, I want to go ahead and start managing a cluster with LCM. Now, to your point, by the way, because I didn't migrate it, I had to go and reconfigure my config profiles, my repositories, my SSH credentials. That was fine. It was easy for me to do, but I totally understand why you'd have to do that because I didn't bring the stuff over. I didn't migrate it. So I was really treating it as though it was an initial Op Center or an LCM install, right? That I imported, that I wasn't migrating anything over because I essentially recreated all the stuff. I eventually ended up in the state. Can you see my screen? Do you see what's going on?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so I eventually ended up in this state where down the board, you've got the little Ghostbusters no ghost here. Now I kind of want to put that in there. The icon, right? And then if I tried to say do a configure job, it'd say no, you have to install the cluster first. So that's where, and I'm going to save what I actually did, because too bad I don't have your face on here, because it would totally be an eye roll. But before I go into what I actually did, what would then be the correct procedure here, right? If I'm at this level, I've just imported it, brand new op center. What's the correct procedure?
Yeah, so you want to do what it's telling you to do, which is to run an install job first. Okay. And I know that feels maybe a little bit funny.
Yeah.
Because DataStax is already on those nodes.
Yes.
But one of the foundational principles in LifeCycleManager is that the system is idempotent and it's convergent.
Okay.
Which is basically a fancy way of saying it is always safe to run the most featureful kind of job over and over again.
Okay.
And you'll always end up in the same state, the state that you want to be in.
Okay.
So the reason that we ask you to run an install job before you can run a configure job is that the install job is the job that does the most work for LCM.
Okay.
It will ensure that DSC is installed. Now, if it finds that DSC is already installed, it will not install it again. It will just confirm that the correct version is there and that it's present.
Oh, so that answers the question. Because if you had a big, we're talking like a single node and clearly a dev setup. If you had like a big cluster, like a big existing cluster, right, that you're already running stuff on, and then you do this, from what I'm hearing is that LCM's not going to go and like reinstall all of those live or anything. It's just going to test to see, it's going to see that DSC is there. Now, does it matter, by the way, if those were tarball installs or if those were package installs when LCM goes to check?
Yeah, the import is going to fail if it's a tarball install.
Okay, so it's going to know.
LCM only supports package installs.
So does it actually? Go ahead.
We do have a migration document.
Okay.
If you're, I guess our migration document is primarily about getting from the installer to either a package or a tarball, depending on the nature of your install.
Okay.
So that's not quite the same use case. Sorry.
Okay. So then, if you did in fact have an existing cluster and you did use tarballs, right? There's one path, but if you use services or packages and created services on them, then there's essentially another path as far as that goes. It sounds to me that you don't want to generally mix and match. Is that true? Like you don't want to have one set of nodes being tarball and another set of nodes being package based?
I certainly wouldn't want to do that in a production cluster. I mean, you can get away with a lot of things and it will work in dev environments, but I think you'd want to commit. And I think, in general, if you've started with a tarball in a prod cluster, I think you probably want to stick with that. I would not in general encourage folks to try and do a tarball to package migration. It's certainly possible, but it's like relatively painful.
Yeah.
And for a dev cluster, you're probably going to spend more time messing around with that than you'll save with LCM.
Yep.
And for a prod cluster, that's a migration that's going to take a lot of planning.
I see. I see.
But if you've got already a deb or RPM install of DSC, or you want to create one, LCM is a really great match for that.
Okay, I get it. That makes sense. Okay, so then what I'm hearing then is if you let's pretend in this case, right, the nodes were a package install. It's homogeneous. They're all package installs, right? I didn't have mix and match in this particular case. It's only a node, but I'm just pretending I had more. That running an install would have been perfectly safe. That would have been fine. And that, again, LCM will detect whether or not you have a DSC instance there and everything. It's not going, and if it does, it's not going to just reinstall right on top of it, right? It's essentially at that point, it's going to say, okay, hey, I see you've got this, but there's something. I mean, what else is it doing from a software perspective? I mean, is it if it finds, say, other packages that aren't there, is it automatically going to install those, or does it do any healing or anything, or am I getting like that's a little too much?
So everything you just said is exactly why we want that install job to run.
Oh, okay.
Again, if you talk about best practices versus fast and loose,
yeah,
you often could get through a configure job, strictly speaking, and it would work, but we don't let you. And the reason we don't let you, the reason we request that you run that install job first is because it's going to get us on the rails. It's going to let LCM know that this system is not partially configured, and it doesn't just happen to sort of work for what you've done so far.
Okay.
It is fully configured and fully managed by LCM.
Interesting. Okay.
We know the packages are there. We know the packages are there on all nodes. We know that you're not halfway through an upgrade that you forgot about, and that you've got one node running DSC 6.0.0 and one node running DSC 6.0.1.
I'm laughing because this is perfect segue into the next question. So what I had done, this might be one of those eye roll moments. So my mistake when I imported, I realize now, and I knew it when I did it, but I was being a little too fast and loose. So originally I had the node set up as 6.7.0, right? But when I was creating my config profiles, I noticed that 6.7.2 was available. And I said, well, I'll get it to the latest and greatest. Now, what I went and did was, and this is after I created the new op center and imported the cluster in. The other one was already working beautifully, the tarball one. But then I already had a node running at 6.7.0. And I said, well, something, 6.7.2 there, let me create another config profile and go ahead and just do, I put it to 6.7.2 and said, let's go ahead and do an upgrade job. Now, the cluster level won't let me do that, but I can sure do that down at the node level. That, at that point, is where I started running into issues. And part of what I ran into was there is a parameter as of 6.7.1 that is in the Cassandra YAML that did not exist in 6.7.0, and now I'm trying to remember what it was. Eric, do you remember what that was? The parameter that...
It was echo something...
Yeah. Let's do that. I can just look at it, because it's in here. Because we were looking at it. Yeah, you're right. Echo was in it. Echo attempts before reset. So that does not exist. According to what I can find in the config profile for 6.7.0, that doesn't exist. But 6.7.1, 6.7.2, they both have it. So what happened is I had a node at 6.7.0. I imported that into LCM. I did not properly run the install job. What I did, though, is I tried to do the upgrade, because I said, I'll just upgrade the node, blah, blah, blah. And it complained. The node failed when it said, hey, it almost like there was like a mismatch between the 6.7.0 that was on the node and then what LCM was trying to push down during the upgrade with 6.7.2, because then it had a collision with echo attempts before reset. And if you looked at the system logs, what was going, it said, hey, I'm trying to access this, but it's not valid. So it felt to me, since what I was seeing in the config profiles between 6.7.0 and 6.7.1 and 2, that the node itself was still at 6.7.0, but then it found a configuration parameter for echo attempts before reset, which was invalid because it didn't exist. I don't know if any of this rings a bell or if it sounds familiar, but at that point, that's where we started running into problems. So what I then tried to do was back out. I said, wait a minute, that was dumb. I should have run the install job first at the correct version. So I went and created a 6.7.0 basic. I went to run the install job, and that would run, but then I kept running into this issue. I'll give it a second, because I know that the Twitch lags a little bit.
Yeah, I still haven't seen your mouse move.
Oh, are you serious? Oh, geez, where is it?
It's above the Cassandra at Power Node 1 window. I assume it was just resting there while you were talking. Maybe Twitch is frozen?
There's...
Yeah,
no, Twitch is moving for me.
Is it because I highlighted the exception in the term window that I have here? Do you guys see that?
I'm reloading my Twitch session just in case it...
Yeah, like I see current Twitch.
You do see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Not having yet seen the exception,
yeah.
I have a couple of general thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Oh, I do. I see this exception highlighted now. Okay. The number of initial tokens specified is different from num tokens. Okay. I do recognize this error.
Okay.
In general, I mean, this may shock you, but this is not a common migration path, the one that you've chosen.
No. Yeah, that's I knew coming into this when I asked you to come on here. We were joking about it. I was like, all right, I think I have multiple eye rolls here for Lococo, or someone going like, why would you do that? Like, why would you do that, right?
You definitely need to record a DataStax 902 Academy class on worst practices in DSC installs. For fun and profit.
Yes.
Because it's educational and informative, but this is certainly not the order that I would advocate folks do things in.
Right. Well, and what I'm hearing from you, correct me if I'm wrong, is if you import a cluster, first and foremost, get through the install job first. Take care of that first before you try to do anything else. Is that true?
Yeah, and really the sort of even more generally, like you can think of it as you wanna get on the rails and stay on the rails.
Yeah.
And the more that you're working around, when LCM suggests do this or that,
okay,
the more likely it is that you're gonna just get yourself into a situation that's hard to get out of. Not necessarily because of LCM, but just because it's easy to get into situations that are hard to get out of.
Right. Right. So
we try and kind of just keep you on the straight and narrow path when we can. But also when things go haywire, it's always viable to drop out of LCM, do some troubleshooting on the node, and then get back into LCM to move forward again.
Okay. So as a little devil's advocate, though, from the standpoint, if I've not had a successful install, the LCM UI does in fact allow me to run a configure job or an upgrade job directly on a node. Why?
That's arguably a misfeature. I didn't know that before you told me that on this call.
Oh, really? Okay.
File a JIRA about that.
Okay, yeah, because I can actually, and we could even do it. I mean, I've actually done this before, where I had a case where the cluster itself was not installed. Like what it was is there was a failure. I'll take that back. The cluster was installed, but there was a failure. I want to say it was at the authentication level, most likely with the old password, new password, or something. Or no, you know what it was? Oh, it's coming back to me. The cobweb's clearing out. Where you run the job, like say you run a configure job, all of the nodes succeed. But then the very last message, when the op center configuration update is being performed, will be an error, or could be an error that says that could not perform. There's something not going on. It seems like at the op center end, and it'll fail at the cluster level. But all of the configure jobs had run successfully on all of the nodes, and I had found in this case here and in that other case that I'm referring to that I would see something like this here at a cluster level and the data center level, but I could still successfully run configure jobs at the node level, even though it was there. But that was after a case where I had a green cluster, if you will, and for some reason there was an error about being able to write to the op center configuration at the very end, which then created that scenario. Does that make sense? Do you know that one?
Yeah, I do hear what you're talking about. There's a number of things. This is another reason we encourage folks to run install jobs first, because there's some bookkeeping that happens at the end.
Yes.
To make sure that Op Center understands it and LCM is all synced up.
Right.
And also we do things like, Cassandra and DSC both ship with a publicly known default password for an admin user.
Yes.
The username is Cassandra, and the password is also Cassandra.
Right.
And LCM will change that password for you if you have authentication enabled. And those are all things that happen at the end of the job, and they are, like you noted, they're associated with the cluster itself. You can have all of the nodes install successfully and configure successfully in a bunch of green checkboxes at the node level.
Yes.
But then there's some events that happen at the cluster level at the end of the job, and it is possible for those to fail. And sometimes, in fact, the right solution is actually just to rerun the job.
Rerun the install job?
That's not an answer I'm proud to give, and I certainly do work with folks to improve job reliability on all fronts on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But there are a number of unusual intermittent conditions that can cause job
interesting. So again, what I'm hearing then, okay, this is really, honestly, when we wanted to then originally bring you on to the stream and talk about some of this stuff, I didn't actually expect we were going to get so many nuggets, so many useful nuggets out of this. So what I'm hearing yet again, though, is if you, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, if you install, if for some reason at the cluster configuration part or something, if you run an install job, and even if that install job or the configure job is successful on the individual nodes, right? I'll say configure job, and I'm configuring at the cluster level. Even if that's successful on the individual nodes, if for some reason that configure job fails at the cluster level, then you need to fix that first to get that in sync before moving on and really trying to do anything else. Is that correct?
I would certainly advocate that as a best practice.
Okay.
Again, there's lots of things that will work, strictly speaking, if you don't do it in that order.
Right.
But
you're setting yourself up for potential future.
For just weird, confusing things that, errors compounding.
Okay.
If you resolve that first error before you trigger your second error, then you've only got to debug one error at a time.
Honestly, this feels like I'm going to put together a blog post on actually what you suggested on the things not to do, because I feel like what I'm getting out of this is there are all sorts of practices that if you, well, I say all sorts. It sounds like there's a handful of things you could do that could potentially get you in some trouble if you don't come at it from the right direction. And it sounds like, generally speaking, the right direction is when you're, make sure that your install is good, your cluster install level is good. If you perform other jobs and anything ever fails or whatever at the cluster configuration level, you need to fix that first. You need to ensure that the cluster configuration for your LCM setup is good and green, right, before going on and trying to do other things.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Many of the issues that you can run into, by bypassing these things are relatively harmless and can be worked around.
Right.
But you can also burn a lot of cycles figuring out how to work around them. Whereas if you had just avoided them, it would have been
you wouldn't have had that problem to begin with. Yeah. No, it makes total sense. Okay. Yeah. So then, as far as the configure and upgrade, yeah, that is a case though. If you're in a state like where we're at right now, it will allow you to run a configure and upgrade on the node directly. And I'll admit that is something that I have done in the past. Why? Because it worked. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I see, okay, well, maybe I saw a particular error come up when I was trying to push down a new configuration, and something happened where it got an error back at the cluster level, but now I can go ahead and push a new config profile directly on the node, right? And I can do that right here and then get it working again and get it green. But the only reason I did that really is because as I was exploring and such, it allowed me to do it. So it sounds like that if we're seeing this, that when I say this, I'm saying we're seeing that it's in a bad state, right? That really the focus should be getting it working at this level, the cluster level first, before trying to muck with configures or upgrades directly, which is then what I went to do and probably how we got into the state we're in now. So, okay. Cool. All right, great. So with that, what I then did, here comes another eye roll for you, is the node itself was at 6.7.0. I tried to perform an upgrade directly to 6.7.2. That failed miserably, in particular because of the one configuration parameter that we were talking about. I then tried to move it back to 6.7.0. And
now, when you say the one configuration parameter, are you talking about initial tokens and num tokens?
No, I'm actually talking about, if we go back, the let's go back here because I'm going to cheat in because I can't remember things. Echo attempts before reset, because that doesn't exist in 6.7.0. So
if you could remind me again, what version of DSE is actually physically installed on your nodes at this minute?
It started at 6.7.0.
And do you know what is on there right now?
No, and that is the place that we're currently at. That is where it's a little confused, and here's why. After I tried to perform the upgrade directly on the node at 6.7.2, we then got some errors regarding to that particular parameter that did not exist in 6.7.0. I then said, well, why don't we revert back to 6.7.0? Well, when I did that, when I created the config profile, the other mistake I made was I did not correctly set my num tokens, which I had set previously. So this was like that by the default. But on the node, it already had a num tokens of 8. So then the second failure, after saying, okay, we're going to revert, then it failed saying, hey, this node already has V nodes, but your num tokens isn't set and blah, blah, blah. So then I went, oops, I totally forgot to go set this. I went and set this in the 6.7.0 config profile. Tried to rerun it again, and now we're in the state that you see here, where we're getting this particular error.
And this is a known issue, and we do have in our issue tracker, we do have a note about this to kind of head off this sharp edge.
Okay.
So what's going on here is confluence of a couple of things.
Okay.
So first of all, LCM and I believe still DSE default to assigning a single token for each node in the DSE cluster.
Yes.
And a token, of course, is where we store our range of keys and values in a schema. But DSE also offers, and LCM supports, assigning multiple tokens per DSE node, and that is often referred to as V nodes.
Right.
And of course, the advantage of using V nodes is that if you have to change cluster topology, it's easier to shuffle around some V nodes between nodes than it is to do a full cluster rebalance and all of the repair headaches that go along with that.
Yes.
So many people do like to use V nodes, but you've got to decide. You can either use.
You start with one or the other. You can't change it in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what's going on in the DSE landscape.
Okay.
And then LifeCycleManager has some helpful features around ensuring if you're not using vnodes, if you're using a single token per node, LCM will try and help you ensure that you end up with a balanced cluster.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know if this is still true, but back in the day, the behavior for DSE when it was picking its own token is it would bisect the biggest range available. So if you stood up one node, of course, it would get the whole range of tokens.
Okay.
If you stood up another node, you'd end up with a 2-node balanced cluster because the next node would say, well, half of that range is, the other side, and now node A has half the tokens and node B has half the, not tokens, half the range, and node B has half the range. But if you wanted to make a 3-node cluster, which is quite a common use case, you got 3 availability zones or something, 3 is a nice odd number that doesn't result in, that lets you do quorum votes and everything, without ties. So 3 is a nice number, but if you do that, now when the third node comes up, it would again bisect the token range, and you'd end up with node A having half of the available data, and node B having 1/4, and node C having 1/4.
Oh, I see.
Which, of course, that's not what you want to do.
That's right.
So LCM, unlike DSE, LCM knows your desired topology before it launches any nodes. So when you've got that 3-node cluster, LCM can say, all right, well, node A should get a third node.
Oh, that's neat. So then if you were not using vnodes and you were just using manual token ranges, which I'm correct, is essentially just leaving num tokens blank is the default, then because when you go to install your cluster, you've already specified all of the nodes. LCM will use that to then determine the token ranges and then automatically set those in a more evenly spread out way.
Precisely. And if you change your topology, we're not going to go around messing with tokens on you because that would require rebalancing, and that can be a slow and arduous process. But at least in that initial setup, if you pick your number of nodes, we'll make sure that you're balanced out of the gate.
That's really cool.
With the default token assignment.
Now,
of course, we're being so helpful, and we do a lot of this kind of like under the covers. We don't exactly tell you exactly what we're doing. We just do it for you because most people like it.
Right.
But then what's going on is we've assigned these tokens, and they're in fact only used once. They're only used when DSE starts up, and after that they're ignored. But we put them in there and we leave them in there.
Okay.
And then later on, you now go and assign num tokens or unassign num tokens or something.
Right.
And now DSE is detecting, well, you've specified a single token, an initial token, but you've told me to have 8 tokens or 16 tokens or something. And that's an illogical, internally inconsistent config, so DSE is rightfully complaining about that.
Right.
Now, LCM, of course, should detect when you've assigned a value to num tokens. And in fact, I think the right thing to do here, I recently had a conversation about this, from memory, I think the right thing to do is just fail the job and refuse to do anything, because it's actually not safe to change the token assignment on a given node.
Right.
You can stand up new nodes with different token assignments. You can stand up a new data center with different token assignments.
Right.
But messing with a pre-assigned token assignment on an existing node is just dangerous. So we need to not do that.
So what happens in the case, though, where you're okay, like in this case, we're okay, it's a dev system, I can lose data. So what we actually had done, we got this error originally before we called you on, right? And we downed the node, I wiped out all of the data files, I wiped, all the files like save caches, hints, commit log, data. Matter of fact, we even went through and totally uninstalled DataStax Enterprise per the instructions here, right? So did all that. Then when I went to
I'm actually going to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Everything you're saying is sensible. Where we're
but
at,
wrong.
No. It's all you're doing all the sensible things.
Okay.
But where we've landed at this point,
is
LCM. Whether you want to call it a bug or a misfeature or whatever, LCM is wedged now. LCM LCM believes that your desired config is a config that makes no sense.
Oh, interesting.
And it doesn't actually make it real easy to set this.
Okay.
Num tokens is exposed in the config profile, so you can change that whenever you want.
Yes.
But initial token is not exposed anywhere in the user interface because we just set it for you and then we're good.
So does LCM think that it wants to do that? Is that why it keeps showing up?
Exactly. So LCM has decided each one of these nodes deserves an initial token, and whatever you do to the DSC files or anything else, every time you run that install job, LCM is going to be like,
that's it. That's where we are. That's exactly it. Yeah.
And it's going to recreate that problem state.
Okay.
And you can't fix it in the user interface, but there is an API, so we can fix it.
Oh, so you can go from the back end and you can do it via the API that way.
Yeah. And of course, what LCM should do is it should prevent you from getting into this situation. It should not allow you to assign num tokens if you've already got an initial token, and it should not assign an initial token if you've already got num tokens. And like I said, we do have an issue to improve that behavior and just do the right thing from the start. But right now, it requires an API call to unwedge yourself out of this situation.
Yeah, totally. No, and see, this is all making so much more sense now and this is seriously, Mike, this is seriously really good information, because to know, and understanding, I understand that LCM is doing a lot for you underneath the hood that's separate from the configuration files and everything. I did not know that it actually helps manage, right, this whole explanation you just gave on if you have a situation where you're in fact using manual tokens, and that it helps manage some of that, right? And then if you just go willy-nilly switch and add vnodes, right, to configuration after that, it may not work. It may not. It sounds like it thinks it has one particular configuration that it wants to use that is separate from what you're doing with num tokens, right? This is all really gold. And then at least it sounds like, though, you can use the API. I've actually found at the end of the day, for almost any esoteric issue that comes up that I can't do with the UI, I can fix with the API, almost always. And I think
that's all completely accurate. And yeah, I mean, and I think another compounding thing is that, and this is a theme with LCM.
Yeah,
we have very rich workflows, but a pretty basic user experience.
Okay.
If it was easy to see this initial token, then you could maybe start to put two and two together.
I see.
But it's not even discoverable how you can figure how you can figure out what's going on here. You just have to go look at DSC logs on the target node.
I see.
But there's always so much more richness we could do on the workflow that we've never had time to circle back and rethink the UI.
No, and that's fair. I totally get that. So is the right then or is the right path then in this case? I don't know if you see my screen to use the backend. I do
see it, and you're exactly in the right place. You want to do a put, and you want to provide the ID, which is that top field there, which you can get with a get. If you just get API v2 LCM nodes, you'll get all of your nodes, and you can pick whichever one has the ID that you're looking for. So you do a put with the ID and the initial token, and I think that's all you need.
Interesting. Now, do you know off the top of your head? Otherwise, I'll just have to look it up. This is done against. I think the API is done against Python. Is that right?
I don't entirely understand your question. What do you mean when you say against?
I'm sorry. It's implemented with. So when you are invoking the backend API, don't you have to go through Python to do so, or is it just curl commands?
As an API client, it's a RESTful API, and you can use any language or tool that can submit RESTful requests. So what you're going to put here is a JSON body with a content type of API JSON, I think. No, that's not right. But the standard JSON content type. And a body containing valid JSON, which is going to open with a curly brace, quote ID, quote, colon, quote, the value, string value of the ID, quote, comma, initial token, colon, initial token value, which I guess in this case we probably, you're saying you do, the actual nodes already have num tokens enabled, is that true?
Yes, as a matter of fact, if I take a look at...
so you're going to want to set initial token to nil.
Oh, so if you just remove it, that's not enough. It'll come back. Is that true? Or are you saying set initial token to nil in the API?
Well, I get there's a couple places we need to investigate configs here, but part of the solution is going to be setting the initial token to nil on each node where it is not nil if you want to be running vnodes.
I see. So is it not there this time? Oops, there it is. Okay, so actually here, whoops. There we go. We're saying this value here, we want to remove the token value and leave the parameter there. But when you say nil, are we actually saying literally put in nil or null or something, or just leave it blank? Or
we don't want to be editing config files on the DSC target.
Okay, because LCM is going to manage that.
Those files.
Okay.
We want to use the node API with either Perl or Python or whatever REST client you're most comfortable with. It could be
I see.
Like a browser plugin called REST-E or something.
Okay.
Any of those ways that we would submit an API, a put RESTful request. Would be
I see. Yeah, I don't know this off the top of my head.
If I stop talking for 5 minutes, I could slack you in fact, that's it. That's. Do you have authentication enabled in Ops Center?
Yes.
Okay, so this is going to be like 3 curl commands or something.
Okay.
And I would need a couple minutes to put together and test them to make sure that they would work, which I could go do if you.
Yeah, if you're down with that, I'm down with that. That'd be great.
Before I go do that, let's go look at one other thing.
Yeah.
Do you want to pull up your configuration profile?
Okay. I don't know if you can see it
yet.
Oh, it's probably. I know the Twitch lags a little bit sometimes.
Now, I saw you went into 670. Is that the config profile that's applied to the cluster at this point?
That's right. So that's the one that I tried to install at. I never was successful with 672, so I decided, let's get back to 670. That's where the node was, and then once I have a successful install, then I can go upgrade it. Okay. So I'm sticking with 670 for the time being.
If you've already got 672 on your nodes, I don't know that LCM is going to help you downgrade it.
I don't believe that
how far you got through your.
We never had a successful install with 672, so I don't believe it's at 672. I could take a look to see.
Well, why don't we check out a DSC target node and make sure? Because just because the job doesn't succeed doesn't mean that we didn't upgrade the package.
Okay.
There's going to be some operations that did succeed and some that failed.
What would be the way that you would suggest to what would be the authoritative way to check for that?
I think dpkg -L space DSC-full. I think that will give you the version number. dpackage-L.
Okay, I have dpackage-L. Then did I hear -DSC-full?
Just DSC-full. The name of the package we're querying is DSC-full, not 2 parameters. But one package name with a hyphen.
Okay. So this DSC or dpackage-L DSC full.
I think so. I
haven't seen that come up on your
screen yet, but with a dash between the DSC and the full.
Oh, okay.
Guys, I got to hop off here. I got another meeting coming up. So good luck. And,
yeah, cool, man. Thanks, Eric. Hey, can you leave the blue jeans?
Yeah. I think. Will it kick you out if I close it, or?
We'll find out. I think so, because you own it. Is that going to be a problem?
I think this should be a persistent room, but I
don't it's not going to kick us when you leave.
Okay, cool.
Well, I will catch y'all later.
All right, cool, man. Thanks, Eric.
So it looks like we're still at 670, and this is the only node in the cluster, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, perfect. So this is the right config profile, and now let's go to, is it Cassandra YAML where num tokens is specified?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, let's go hit there.
And I've got that to 8.
And let's look for num tokens in here somewhere.
I have. I've already got it up. You're probably lagging on the Twitch.
Okay, I see it. So we do have 8 num tokens specified.
Yes.
At some point, I feel like you must have run a job where num tokens was 0. And
I did.
Yeah, that's what got LCM confused. It's when num tokens is 0, that's what triggers that initial token.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened, because when I created the original 670 profile, I had made a copy. Like 672 actually had the configuration that I wanted, and that's where I set num tokens. When I created the 6701, I didn't copy it from the original, and I forgot to set my num tokens, so it did. It started at 0, and that was what started the issue. Yeah.
This is another place where doing that Op Center data file migration would have helped you, because if you had brought over your old config profile, then as part of the upgrade, LCM has the clone profile feature, and that will ensure that all of your settings from your previous profile end up in your new profile.
Okay.
And it will also do things like if there's been a deprecated setting that doesn't work with the new version of DSE, that will automatically get removed and will tell you that we're removing it. So if that's a setting that you customize, that you care about, then you can know it's no longer supported in the new version of DSE before you do your upgrade, and you can adjust your upgrade plan accordingly. Similarly, if new parameters are added in the new version of DSE, we'll add those parameters in with the default values, and we'll tell you that we're doing so, that you can see all the changes you're getting. So using the clone profile feature is a really great way to avoid these kinds of, I forgot this setting, that setting kind of issues. But now you're in a good state here with your config profile, so it's really just a matter of going in and cleaning up those...
Cleaning up my mess.
those node definitions. I can't promise that will be the last issue that you run into. But it will. That's the last step in unwedging this specific issue. And then when LCM writes Cassandra YAML during the next job after that's fixed, it will write it with an empty initial token, and it won't try and recalculate it because you've set num tokens here, and that tells LCM don't go calculating initial tokens. And then when DSE next starts up, it shouldn't give you that specific error, and we'll see what we run into next time.
That's cool.
So I do have, I need to grab some lunch, and I have a meeting coming up in 20 minutes.
Yeah, no worries.
So let me drop, and I'll Slack you some curl commands.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And then I can go issue them, and I can do that and move on. But now I know the proper procedure, right? That really it needs to be started at the cluster level. The install must be run to get it at a steady state before you mess around with configure, upgrade, or any of that other stuff. And then once I've gotten that, hopefully that'll be it. Because that was the only other error we were getting, by the way. And that was the only one change in the config profile that I missed. So hopefully that is just that one thing. Remove it. I can then go redo the install, right? So I'll remove that, redo the install. And then once that then stands up, then I can move to 672 and do all that kind of stuff. But always starting at the cluster level and ensuring that is good before moving on.
All good advice, yeah.
Cool. That's awesome, man. No, I really appreciate this. Yeah, that would be great, by the way. If you can, I mean, if not, I'll find them. But if you think you can whip up some of the curl commands or whatever, I don't care if it doesn't have to be curl. But to talk to the API, and then I'll continue on and stuff. And like I said, there's a bunch of really good gold nuggets in here. So I really appreciate you getting on and streaming with me. That's awesome.
No problem. The last gold nugget I'll leave you with before I drop off and get those curl commands for you is at the bottom of that API document you were looking at a minute ago. There's actually an example API client implemented in Python. Again, you don't have to use Python, but just our example code is in Python. And it shows you how to set up. I think if you just scroll down to maybe go back up to the top. and then go one level back in the breadcrumbs, I think.
Maybe there. That might be too far, or maybe this is it. Okay. Oh.
I guess, is it 655 documentation? Is that it?
Oh, it is 655. That's true. Funny enough, I hadn't noticed this one before. Yeah, go ahead.
Our API hasn't changed that much since 655. There's a few small things, but not all that interesting.
All right, just change it to 6.7.
And then cluster lifecycle management is at the bottom of that bundle of links at the top.
Okay.
You've gone too far. Oh, no, there you go. I got it. All right, and then there was a link to it at the top there. It's called cluster install walkthrough, I think. It moved pretty fast.
Yes. Oh, there it is. Here, you want me to click on the cluster install walkthrough?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I got to wait for the Twitch to...
So anytime you or somebody else is kind of coming up to their first experience with the LifeCycleManager API, this is a great little bit of code to look through. It's maybe 75 or 100 lines or something.
Okay.
And it just shows examples of how to do everything you need to go from 0 to a working cluster, which is,
cool.
For 85-90% of use cases, you're going to be able to copy and paste from this into a Python file.
Okay.
Or if you're not using Python, it's going to show you exactly what you're going to need to submit in whatever language.
Very cool. Yeah, honestly, this for me is like the next step in the LCM API stuff. To date, the commands that I've issued have all been with curl. That obviously, and with that, they haven't been terribly complex. I've got some stuff, actually, some of the things that Justin was doing with the multi-cloud deal. There are some things I need to get into this anyway, is what I'm getting at. I need to get into doing it with Python and kind of setting things up this way. And this, to me, actually seems like a really neat way to get your configuration all built and set up with the LCM API backend. Then this is stuff that I can be, obviously without any credentials, but I could check this into Git or GitHub or whatever. I could have my configuration for my cluster all set, and then I can just run this at any time to build the thing. From what I've seen, what we've done with the multi-cloud stuff. So this is like
and Justin Breeze's multi-cloud stuff is actually based on this. Like this was what he started.
Oh, are you serious?
It's
that's great.
Out and but at one point, that repo was basically this file on his disk.
Interesting. That's great. Okay, cool. Yeah. So I have to get into this anyway. So that's kind of perfect. So I'll take a look at this. Actually, I may go ahead and generate something like this for my local setup, because I just have the one node now, right? At the end of the day, I'm probably going to be like 10, 12 nodes or something. I don't want to have to be. I purposely go through the LCM API a lot because that is where a lot of our users are coming in. So I want to experience it the way that they experience it and know how all that works. But there are also going to be folks who are going to want to do it this way as well. So I have to kind of learn them all,
Makes good sense.
Cool.
Okay, so I'll drop, and hopefully in the next 10 minutes I can get you a couple of curl commands. And curl is a great way to use the API as well. It's a very terse API. There isn't a ton of boilerplate that you're not gonna be writing 50-line curl commands.
Right.
You can go a long way with a 70 or a 90 character long curl commands.
Okay.
And do some tweaks. So I'll try and shoot that over to you.
Okay, awesome, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you so much. And all right, so guys, I'm going to stop the stream, and we'll see you here in a little bit.